Hello. I hope you're all able to see us. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We're so glad so many of you could make it to learn more about WE's newest project. I'm Paige Bradley, Executive Director of Women's Empowerment International, and today it's our pleasure to present WISE, the Women's Impact, Sustainability, and Empowerment Project, the newest program of Women's Empowerment International. Today, you will get an inside look at WISE, our data-driven assessment tool created by our volunteer experts in the field that enables our team and you, our WE community, to clearly see the impact of the funds that we invest in women's lives. We are incredibly proud of this work and have been looking so forward to finally sharing it with you. It's been over a year in the making, and we now have some excellent data to share. We see this as an important project for several reasons. First, it enables us to offer assurance backed by evidence to you, our community of supporters, that indeed your donations are having the intended impact of effectively empowering women in need. Because of WISE, we can now go beyond the partner reports, firsthand accounts, and women's stories that have long informed our decision making to actually document women's lives, both here in San Diego and around the world. WISE gives us the data that tells the story of positive change. Second, WISE provides our board of directors with impact numbers upon which to base its decisions about the effectiveness of our partners, informing choices about partner renewals and funding awards. WISE gives us a roadmap that reveals where our funds are having the most impact. The WISE project is the result of the vision, diligence, and careful analysis of two truly remarkable women who have joined us here today, Judith Fullerton and Stefania Marchina. It's my pleasure to both offer them my profound thanks and to introduce them. First, a couple housekeeping issues. In our 45-minute program, Debbie McGraw, WE's president, will discuss the value of WISE for our partners and for WE as a nonprofit that strives to maintain the highest standards of due diligence and careful monitoring. We will then move into our slideshow, where Judith and Stefania will discuss the metrics and the data at the heart of this work, revealing how they have measured the positive change we're seeing in women's lives. We'll then leave some time for Q&A with our panelists, so please feel free to share your questions with us throughout the program just by putting it in the chat, and then we'll address those toward the end of the program. Now to meet our amazing panelists. Judith Fullerton is a former member of the WE board and continues to serve in the role of volunteer and co-leader of the WISE project. Dr. Fullerton is a retired professor from UC San Diego's School of Medicine and from her own personal international consulting firm that focused on measurement and evaluation of global projects in maternal, newborn, and reproductive health. But I will say that if Judith is in fact retired, I see no evidence of it, and she is the hardest working retired woman I've ever met, but I've said that before about most of the leaders of women's empowerment. Stefania Marchina is a current PhD candidate in global development studies. She also serves as executive director of the United Nations Association in San Diego and is co-leader of the WISE project. As a young scholar and a passionate volunteer, she focuses on evidence-based solutions to foster women's empowerment and address adverse economic environments. We're really honored to have both of them with us here today, and even more to have them spearheading and making this project possible for women's empowerment. Our hope is that what you learn here this morning will give you that much more confidence about the important impact your support is having on women's lives, and deepen your faith that your donations are being carefully stewarded and allocated in the most effective possible way. Thank you again for joining us. And with that, I will now turn it over to WE's fabulous president, whom most of you know, Debbie McGraw.
Thank you, Paige. And thanks everybody for bearing with us as we get with the program and mute and unmute at the appropriate times. Let me briefly talk about our partners and how the WISE program has become a win-win for WE and for our partners. As you may know, WE currently has 8 global partners, 3 here in San Diego, as well as Puerto Rico, Honduras, Haiti, Mexico, and Uganda. This year, we will have granted $244,000 in funding to these partners. Since our inception in 2005, we have provided $1,780,500 in funding to assist poor women worldwide. By the way, in the very first year, we allocated a total of $4,500 to Grameen de la Frontera in Sonora, Mexico. Quite a growth. From the inception of WE, our intention has been to form partnerships that last over a period of years. Not forever, but we want to make a long-term and meaningful commitment that our partners can count on. It's always our hope that not only the women clients of our partner organizations will be successful, but that also our partners too will achieve a sustainable status that allows we to move on to new partners and to begin the cycle of success over again. In the initial years of women's empowerment, we focused our requests for regular progress reports on important matters like how our funding was being spent and how well the microloans were being repaid and reinvested, along with, of course, the all-important client stories. But until Judith Fullerton joined our board, we didn't have a data-driven way to focus on the improvements being achieved by the women overall, nor did we know anything about the longevity of the businesses that they started. It was at that point that the board recognized the opportunity we had to implement a framework to evaluate these important issues over time, and Judith was eager to help us put it into place. Surprisingly to me, our partners embraced this new effort and agreed to collect additional data about their clients. They recognized that for a relatively small effort, they too would benefit from the data collected. Whether they are working to improve their programs or apply for other sources of funding, insights about the impact and sustainability of program interventions is clearly effective data. An agreement to collect and report this data annually is also now built into our partnership applications and agreements. I'm pleased now to turn the program over to Judith, who will explain what we mean by impact and sustainability.
Thank you very much. And again, with apologies for the technical difficulties, we'll sustain and will have an impact, we hope. The question, of course, is what we and what the measurement community really means by impact and sustainability. And we'll get to those definitions and the outcomes in a moment. But let me just comment that those of you who contribute to the charities of your choice always have that question about how efficient that organization is in using the money for its intended purpose. And many of you, probably all of you, are quite aware of some charity rating systems that exist in the wider world of finance and nonprofits, and probably particularly aware of the GuideStar profile. We has had a GuideStar profile for over 3 years, and the data that are being presented to you today, the 2019 data, are present there in the GuideStar profile that you will read should you go check on us. But you should also understand that one of the important criteria for receiving the highest, the platinum rating that is offered and has been achieved by women's empowerment is the impact summary. And GuideStar is pretty clear on the kind of information that they want. The transparency of financial data, yes, but the transparency of the effectiveness of programs. And you will find that information there and in this presentation. So we'll define impact as we has defined it and as the measurement community at large defines it. And that's a behavioral change, a measurable behavioral change. And for we, that means a measurable difference in the lives of women participants. We'll see shortly the measures by which that we have put in place in order to affix a metric to that measurement. But underpinning this definition and underpinning our measures are two guiding principles with which we have engaged our partners. And one of them is that these information can be widely shared. The results, the outcomes can be widely shared, such as by posting on GuideStar and through presentations like this. And particularly that the measurement shouldn't present an added burden to the organizations to distract them from their primary mission. And in negotiation of these measures, the discussion has gone both ways, and many of the projects have themselves posed a consideration, a discussion of the kind of measurement indicators that would be of value to them and to we together. So non-burdensome and transparent measurement of behavior change that makes a measurable difference. The second measure that is collected for all projects is that of sustainability, as defined by that positive or negative change over a period of time. As you will see as we move forward through the presentation of the results, what we're presenting to you are 2019 calendar year data for our projects that were able to measure that for as short a period as 6 months and as long as a period as the full calendar year. And in some instances, individual projects had data available that they could reference in prior calendar years. We'll make that clear as we go along, but the interest of both we and the project partners was to see that this was not a one-time impact, but that the things that we were measuring, the positive changes, were able to be demonstrated over a period of time. So it is not a one-off, but it is a true change in the lives of the women participants.
Know, there are various economic empowerment and poverty alleviation strategies that are deployed around the world. And research tells us that some of these are certainly more effective than others for poor women and families. And this research is what has guided women's empowerment in our choices to focus our funding on the following kinds of efforts, which were measured through WISE and that we will be taking a closer look at this morning. So in terms of women's economic empowerment, what has been proven effective? So when we consider this question, we know that microloans, the offering of microcredit, as well as cash assistance, stipends, and seed money can be effective. Entrepreneurship training, financial literacy training and education, as well as access to paid work and workforce readiness training. We know that these are proven strategies, and the other thing that we know and that has been borne out through this project is that the longer that organizations are able to remain constant and steady with those partners and with the women that they're assisting, the more effective those interventions become.
From the founding of WE, the powerful concepts of empowering women through modest financial support and essential training to start and sustain small businesses has been a primary motivator for our decision-making about taking on new partners. At the same time, we are always staying abreast of ongoing research and the efforts of concerned NGOs and foundations, such as the UN or the Gates Foundation, to test and evaluate new strategies. The bottom line is that we want to support programs that work and also help programs to improve their results. One tangible result of this was an expansion of our mission statement 3 years ago. While we clearly want to continue to support microlending programs, and we have seen how successful they can be, We wanted to also be able to support other promising strategies. A case in point is our partnership with Dreams for Change in San Diego, a workforce readiness training program for women facing many barriers to success in the workplace. You can see from the table on this page the main interventions our partners employ and which partnerships down at the bottom we have categorized each in. We have learned along with our partners how important education and training is to complement the financial tools. Training and education is a core concept in each of our partners' programs. We are eagerly looking forward, for example, to learning how the education-based intervention Girls Invest will impact the lived experience of the girls who participate. As we continue to search for partners whose innovative programs we want to support, having a common way to evaluate the impact of these programs and the sustainability of the interventions becomes increasingly important. Back to Judith.
The first of the 2019 data that we want to present to you today is an example of the outreach. We receive our measurements, we participate with projects that had in 2019 as large a number as 4,118 participants in microloan programs in Adelante. But we're just as equally interested in the impact on the lives of real women in Dreams for Change, the 8 women that participated in that project, the 14 and the other 2 at VIA and Progetto Matria. Our interest in measuring all of this was that we wanted to be able to demonstrate that these interventions work independent of culture, independent of community, but universally across these projects. For that exact reason, as you'll see later, we chose cross-cutting indicators that where they fit the work of the project, they could be measured in each of the projects in which they fit, from the very smallest to the very largest who participate in our activity.
First of all, thank you everyone for being here, and I'd like to extend my gratitude to the Board of Women's Empowerment International and to Paige, its Executive Director, for their trust and support to this project. And of course to Judith for her outstanding mentorship through the process. For me, this has been a superb and enriching opportunity, learning firsthand how women's empowerment is making change in women's lives. At the start of WISE, we faced that critical task of developing key metrics to measure women's economic empowerment. How can we put numbers to this? So based on global development literature and through one-on-one conversation with each of WISE partners, we were able to develop a measurement strategy that included, as Judith mentioned, cross-cutting metrics across the projects. This has allowed us to firsthand evaluate best practices and to provide our partners, and of course, to we, with strategies for further growth. The indicators that you see in the slide tell a story that goes beyond the data. Because when women increase their financial literacy to manage their own finances, to create and sustain a business, they acquire tools to provide better for themselves and for their families. This has an impact in their provider roles within their households. Access and control to economic resources further supports women's autonomy and decision-making ability for themselves and in behalf of those that they care for. While intervention strategies vary across WISE partners, the ability of women participants to sustain their businesses over time is a key element to evaluate the best way to support them in the achievement of long-term success. While we go in depth into each indicator, as Judith mentioned before, please note that this is the first year that we receive data from the partners. We already went into a process of reviewing with them what can we do to receive more and enhance data for next year, calendar 2020. So while not all partners were able to connect all the data, the results that we have and that we handpicked today to showcase to you provide insightful results to help WISE as the projects and our partners to grow together, and certainly to see how Women's Empowerment International is changing women's lives across the globe. Back to you, Judith.
Paige.
It's actually me this time. We're now going to take a closer look at two of Women's Empowerment's partners and their economic empowerment programs. And these are Dreams for Change, which empowers homeless women here in San Diego, and Proyecto Matria, which runs a small business incubator for women in Puerto Rico. And through the short video that we're going to share with you, you're going to hear directly from the women who are being assisted, as well as from the leaders of these programs, about what they do and how these programs empower women.
What we find is that it's not about a willingness to work. People want to work. We hear that over and over again. How do I get to work? But then we sit down and look at all the barriers that they're facing. It's really taking a look at that. How do we start attacking each one of those barriers and slowly start alleviating those?
We now have workers on our food truck who are being paid part-time to build their soft skills to help them in finding full-time work or other part-time jobs.
I fell in love with this program right away, and I've had big positions in my life. I never thought I would have to start life over, but it's very fulfilling, and I absolutely love working with the community.
Proyecto Matria is a feminist organization, and we have been working for the past 15 years with women that are survivors of domestic violence, gender violence in general, and also with head of households that lives in poverty. So we work with them to empower them while giving them services of transitional housing and economic development. Libera is the business incubator of Matria, and that's my favorite program there. In Libera, women have the opportunity to empower themselves through empowerment workshops, but we also work with them to develop the entrepreneurship skills that they need to begin a business. And at the end of the program, we also help them with capital money or seed money to begin their enterprises. In Libera, we usually see a process that involves not only the economic part of the process of the women, we also see the empowerment of them. And at the end, the woman is another woman. It's a woman that can make decisions, that can help another woman or women, and that can also pursue a life free of violence.
And now we'll take a look at what we measures in this project and what we found from that measurement. And an important point to be made here is that there was mutual engagement between we and the projects in developing those specific metrics specific to the projects, but also gaining the information that was necessary to see how we could word the measurement so that it would cross-cut across projects where it was applicable. Here in financial literacy is a perfect example of that, because the Girls Invest project, which has not yet begun collecting data, but which is an authorized research project at San Diego State, had developed a measurement tool for financial literacy for its participants when it gets off the ground, and allowed us to select and to adapt that particular the wording of the components, the outcome measures of that financial literacy tool as they fit well into the Proyecto Matria and Dreams for Change progress, where women participants are asked questions such as how confident they feel in their ability to do many financial things, such as opening a bank account or a checking account or applying for a credit card, applying for a loan, managing and saving money, applying for a job. And you can, and other measures, but that's an example of how we adapted to the mutual benefit between project and participants, we and the project participants, to make a measurable way of actually measuring the information that we wanted to obtain. You'll see in the 2019 calendar year, initial calendar data in Dreams for Change among those 8 women, almost 3 out of 4, 1 out of 3 women were able to say that at the end of the informational lessons in which they participated, they were able to make those financial decisions and create their business. And in the context of Proyecto Matria, to make business plans. Here, 4 out of 5 women in 2019 said that that was an outcome of their learning. Another thing that we measure, cross-cutting, is change in provider role. Clearly becoming self-sufficient and self-encouraged, self-confident in the ability to maintain one's own finances had an impact on the way these women operated within their own households as the provider, the financial provider or contributor, which was a second measurement. Here, those who were already or became the main provider in their households for IRC, which is well known as a business incubator. 14 of the 43 respondents, with a comment to come in a moment. Dreams for Change, 7 of their 8 participants, via 8 of their 14 women who started their own businesses as an alternative to the activity in which they were previously engaged, and 9 of 14 respondents from Proyecto Matria who started their own businesses. The comment on IRC was, I will say, as much of a surprise to IRC itself as it was to us when we engaged with the project in trying to understand those data. And we found, and IRC was amazed to find, that they have 2 types of loans and business incubators. One is what they call their small businesses. Those are things such as catering businesses and Uber drivers and small home craft industries. Those women who were typically already a member of a household in which they had another individual who had always contributed were less likely to become the main provider. Nevertheless, that changed for some. But that was we determined that was the difference for that lower, seemingly lower response for the impact that participating in this activity had on women becoming, sustaining, staying, or becoming the main provider in their household. But overall, the results are very encouraging that women have seen that they have a chance to change that circumstance.
Thank you, Judith.
Excuse me 1 second. There's a question in the chat. What is IRC? That's the International Rescue Committee STAR program, which is a business entrepreneurial educational program. All right, Stefania.
Excellent. So diving now into the changes in decision-making ability, as I said earlier, it is profoundly connected with women being able to have access and control over economic resources. And the data confirm that. Now, it's important also to note that this is a self-reported assessment that is subjective to the women's experiences, but it is a key indicator that shows that important correlation between women that are or become either secondary or primary providers on their households. We can see here that 100% of women at Dreams for Change reported an increase in their decision-making ability for themselves and within their family structure. The case for BA International is more complex, as the program serves women sex workers in Tijuana that face much ties to their autonomy within their families and workplace. But nonetheless, 50% of participants experience an increased sense of autonomy, which is still outstanding results. As we can see also with Projectometria, we have 100% reported increase in the sense of autonomy and decision making, which is also related not only with having that access to resources, but to having the financial literacy component that gives you tools to make decisions. International organizations such as UN Women, the World Bank, and the International Labor Organization report that there is this positive relationship between women's financial literacy, their access to the economic resources, and their sense of autonomy, which therefore reflects on their ability to negotiate domestic and care work within the household, and even the potential to leave abusive relationships or environment. These processes take time. Therefore, seeing the positive changes over the course of just a calendar year highlights the effectiveness of the interventions and their potential to transform women's lives. We cannot wait to see what awaits us on calendar year 2020 reporting.
And then we look at sustainability. Please remember that what you are seeing are 2019 data, which represent baseline data for the majority of the programs. However, some of the programs, such as the International Rescue Committee, have a long history of the programming before they engaged in the WISE project. And we're able to look backward beyond into 2018 at minimum and take a longer look at their sustainability of the programs they started. And here was a surprise to IRC, according to IRC, that they had not been totally aware of the fact that there was a difference between the small business incubator programs that they started, such as I mentioned, the Uber and the home craft and the catering businesses, and another whole body of businesses, the childcare businesses, particularly the linguistically relevant childcare businesses, where there was a distinct difference. What you see, the overall percent, is a number reported, the clients, the percentage who were making money, a longer term income making ability from the small business component, the half of the effort that IRC engages in. That number was 100% for the childcare businesses. Now, again, this is 2019 data. We know that 2020 is likely to make a difference, but we and IRC just hope to see, be able to measure and be able to compare the 2019 to the impact of 2020. Foncose is another of WE's partners that chose their own choice to go back to the beginning of their program, not to the beginning of WE's investment in their program, but rather to the start of the Boutique Centre program, which is a business incubator that provides the financial literacy information and training that's necessary for women to become community health entrepreneurs and establish their own little corner business shops, their boutiques, where they sell health products. And it was of insight to Foncose that when they followed the individuals who graduated from that program over a longer period of time, they were able to see a decreasing percentage of sustainability, which was important information to them and to IRC, both of whom said, we now know that we need to have a longer term relationship and follow up with our clients who may require that immunization booster, let us say in COVID terms, to increase that sustainability. Via International, which gave us a year's data and looked back to 2018 for a few months for which they had data, found that 3 of 4 women who started a business had that business in business for at least a year. And with Proyecto Matria, all of the 14, 100% sustained their businesses over that period of measurement time. We'll be eager to look at this all again next year. And of course, again, we repeat that we've talked to each of the projects. What is it that you will be able to measure for us in 2020? And we've encouraged lots of little footnotes to their data about how they believe that COVID-19 impacted this. But nevertheless, we have these foundational data, and maybe 2021, we all hope, we'll be able to compare 19 to 21 with 20 perhaps as a blip. But again, in summary, that the intention is to see whether the short-term investment and perhaps now with some longer-term vaccination immunization, a little input into the longer-term follow-up of those projects will help that issue of sustainability. The investment at one time is helpful, investment over a longer time, and the move toward individual self-sustainability is all of our objective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for those incredibly informative remarks and again for the project. We now have an opportunity to take some questions from all of you, and if you have questions about the project itself, if you'd like to know a little bit more about the our partners and the programs that we're supporting, we'd be happy to answer any of your questions now. And one of the questions that's been asked is, how are we defining longer term here?
Mm-hmm. And yes, a very important question, because as I noted, the 2019 are baseline data. So for we, longer term is going to be the length of the investment that in which we and the project partner continue to sustain a relationship. But it's clear to the partners themselves, as I hope I mentioned, particularly for RRC and Foncose as examples, that they themselves value knowing this information and continuing to gather it over their own longer term. So while it might not be a relationship between we and that project, the value to that project has been demonstrated to them, and many of them have adopted it into their own impact and sustainability procedures, however they define that.
Okay, thank you. We have another question that we actually anticipated, which was, what about NIACA and the Grandmothers Program, as well as the other organizations that we fund? We haven't had a chance to necessarily talk about all of those today. So if you can address the status of those partners within the WISE project.
Mm-hmm. Adelante, one of WE's longer term projects, has a different focus in its measurement. It uses the Poverty Probability Index, a standardized tool that measures emergence out of poverty. Those data were not presented to you today because they're not cross-cutting. It's the only project in which you collect that data. However, they also participate in measurement of the other cross-cutting indicators, but they were unable to do the field work necessary to collection of that data for 2019 because of internal challenges in finances, but they've committed to measuring it in 2020. NIACA is in the WE's largest by population, thousands and thousands of grandmothers and other participants in that project. And because of the scale of that project, the sampling size that we would have had to gather in order to make a measurable, meaningful interpretation of the statistics would have been a huge burden to that project. And for that reason, we did not collect data from NIACA. Dreams for Change, Girls Invest hasn't yet moved forward. They have had to change their protocol many times because of COVID. So while they shared their measurement instrument with us, they have not yet enrolled people into their project and haven't started collecting the data.
Thank you. We have a question about Honduras, and Judith, you just addressed the relationship between Honduras and WISE, but Debbie, I wonder if you wouldn't be able to just talk briefly about what's happened most recently in Honduras outside of the project, but the storms that they faced and the circumstances of that partnership and the challenges they're currently seeing on the ground.
Yes, sure. I think it's fair to say that Honduras has been absolutely pummeled this year, starting with the virus and then continuing on with at least two very significant hurricanes in the fall. So we are continuing to be in touch with them while trying not to be a burden on them. They're in recovery mode and working to make sure all of their clients are safe, and they're just in a really difficult situation, and we're there with them, and we want to be helpful to them in whatever way we can. I could also mention that at the beginning of the year, the virus hit them hard, like most of Central America, and we got some reporting that early on, 50% of the businesses that the women were running had been closed down. But because of the intervention of Adelante early on in the virus, they've been able to restart businesses. They've been able to give the women new ideas for enhancing and continuing their businesses, such as maybe sewing masks or food sharing programs, which has been a desperate situation. They've really been able to get back to the point where only about 20% of their businesses have closed. So well, we don't, we're unhappy or feel for them that they've had that kind of closure. It's much better than early on in the pandemic.
Okay, and I think we're coming up on the end of our 45 minutes here, but I think something on the minds of our guests today, and certainly all of us, has been the potential impact of the pandemic on both this project and, of course, on our women worldwide. I wonder, Stefania, if you might just try to address a little bit how you see COVID-19 impacting the project and how you anticipate going forward with WISE through this completely atypical and challenging year.
Of course, thank you, Paige. Well, definitely what we've seen and global reports say as well is that COVID-19 will exacerbate poverty conditions and any sort of crisis in the different contexts and regions of the world. So that really makes women's empowerment funding these projects even more imperative right now. There will definitely be changes in the data, which will have footnotes and all sorts of explanations firsthand from the people collecting the data in the communities that will explain what happened with COVID, their intervention strategy for recovery. But it will be an incredibly learning opportunity of how to lift women out of extraordinary crises. So this makes our work even more crucial at this time. And we will certainly evaluate the data and make the changes needed to report to the board next steps and useful data for decision making into where funding is more needed and where our partners are applying incredible best practices, such as Debbie was explaining in Honduras, when crisis interventions are saving businesses that could have been totally lost without our partners in the ground. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you. Certainly one of the things that we've seen around the world is that women really are bearing the brunt of this pandemic in every sense, as healthcare workers, as primary caregivers at home and in their communities. And some statistics indicate that as much as a decade worth of progress has been lost as a result of this pandemic on people who are living in extreme poverty. So that's something we're watching closely, and we're determined to be a partner in the long recovery that is ahead. So with that, I just want to thank you all so much for taking the time to be here today. We're going to be sending to you a recording of this session because we realize that what we've shared with you is some fairly dense information, but we also just want to offer to listen, to answer any additional questions you may have. Please get in touch with me or any of our panelists today if you have interest in further information about this project or any of our partnerships. Before I let you go, I just want each of you to know how profoundly we appreciate your support and the loyal partnership that we have with you in this work, because truly it just wouldn't be possible without you. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you are staying safe, staying well, taking good care, staying in again. And just please never forget what an incredibly important difference that you are making. Take good care, and until next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Paige.